Well, hello, Wisconsin. It's so great to be here. Thank you to Madison College for bringing me, for the students at Yahara Journal for inviting me, and all of Matt's students for attending class in this room with me today. I really am happy to be here and to see some old friends in the audience as well. I'm going to begin with some poems from the book and then read you some new poems. And currently I live in Tennessee. It's a little bit different than Wisconsin in a lot of ways. In one way, in that it is warm there almost all the time, and it doesn't quite feel like autumn. But when I got up here today, it did. So I want to start with a poem about autumn thinking. Yes, I'm talking about being a tree again. Deciduous, thrumming with molt, I admire sycamores shedding their golden fleets and think, yes, let's learn finance, chop wood, tattoo my arms with poppies, study entomology. Let's tap maples, shear sheep, discover rare fungi. It's the air, I know. It's the light. But my autumn other, she bites, less mirage than maniac. Tree, you're lucky to disperse tiny boats of yourself, always new ones rocking briefly in your intricate harbor. So the poems in this book move around to various places of memory and nostalgia. So I'm going to start with a few that look back on my family and growing up on a farm in Illinois. This next one is called First Visitation, and it's about my great-grandmother Catherine, who I never met in real life, but I imagined this scene with her ghost. First Visitation. When she arrives, quiet as a thimble, I want to throw a chair at her. Instead, I weep. Catherine scribbles out a family tree, but she might as well be a squid, this ghost unbraiding my hair, rubbing my shoulders. Her voice rakes all the leaves. Harvests me, that boy. I try to show her how it was like he threw a teacup on the floor and I ate every piece. How it was like long grass forever. She makes my womb a swallow's nest. I break it in half. She replaces my feet with eagle talons. I cut them off. She turns my heart into a bucket. This one I'll take, but I empty it out. Water swims around us and we are both ghosts. My bedroom washes away, then the house. Outside, fireflies gather us into their baskets of light and carry us, first to the trees, then to their mouths. And this memory poem is called Drowning the Marigold. If every diary is a prayer, leave them clasped as palms. If all I say is split like a coin, half true, half foul, know that when I drowned the marigold my brother planted for my mother, it was spite, not accident. Know that I wanted the bees to live forever in our barn slats, that I still wake wanting to watch my father and uncle, home from farming, eat sandwiches on rye. I want to keep the hate I felt for that grassy flavor, which I love now, as I do so many tastes, not so much acquired as surrendered to. I'd trade red wine and bitter beers, darkest chocolate, for those childhoods I keep polished as coins in the satchel of my chest. Dew climbing my feet as I walk to the sapling I planted and weep, so fretful of its survival I'm tempted to pull it from the earth, its dirt-thick roots the matted hair on a newborn's skull. I didn't really drown my brother's marigold, but I did sabotage an apple sapling that he planted, and for no good reason. You know, his big sister, little brother things. And I do feel bad about that, but he doesn't really like plants, so I don't feel that bad for him, bad for the tree that I sabotaged. So So many of the poems look backwards, and a lot of the poems also look forward. And in looking forward, they often invent futures that sometimes never arrive, or that are alternate to reality. This next poem sort of grew out of the grief around my grandparents' death. I was living in Oregon at the time, and they died within 6 months of each other, and that was really hard, double loss to take from 3,000 miles away. So this poem deals with that, and it's called Valetti, and that means a slight wish or inclination. That longed-for ghost, my unborn daughter, looked like the quivery flicker of fish across a pond's skin. If I held her, I'd see that other land where the dead and unborn live in lake-colored clothes, hair messy with marigolds. I won't say what I promised her to make her follow me to Illinois, my grandparents' empty house. Where grief roosted, we unclipped its wings, opened every window, snapped all the rugs. Before, she daydreamed under a sky stitched in swallowtails. Now she likes geese wintering on the hoary river. She smells like old novels, her hand in mine, pressure on a bruise. For a while, I called her Veridian, Mayapple, Life Raft, and her babbling matured into a willow's green straps. For a while, she never aged, never asked for her absent imaginary father, and for a while our lives were happy scenes pasted to a garden mirror. But, like all children, she found contrary interests and, afternoons, bounced a tennis ball against the shed door. Locked for hours in her bedroom, she'd emerge, maps of the world drawn on her arms, hair no longer a toddler's gosling feathers. Before long, her feet, then her heart, would turn her like the moon, one face always away from me. I told her to go back to that unlife, the seasonless world where you belong. I warned her it only gets sadder. Spoiled girl, she slapped me. She lifted her shirt and showed me a torso tattooed in Latin, every species of dying frog, every white-nosed bat. Smog frothy on her chest. Whether we fought or stewed in silence, does it matter? It was her skin now. She could hate it, love it too. Water break. So the poems in this book, as you may have guessed, are a bit sad, but don't worry, we're going to get to some more amusing territory before the end of all this, so do not fret. Next, I'll read a poem. So I've lived in 5 states so far, so Wisconsin, Illinois, Oregon, Tennessee, and also Virginia. I actually lived in Charlottesville, Virginia, which became unfortunately famous this summer after the violence there around the protests against the white supremacists. So this is one of my Charlottesville poems. It's after an Elizabeth Bishop poem called Paris, 7 a.m., and this is Charlottesville, 7 a.m. A stranger kissed me at a party last night, first with her eyes, white arrow of her chest inside the white envelope of her shirt, snow on snow. Winter lives under a pigeon's wing. Branches crack beneath their glass harvest. Juncos punctuate the bleached yard, chip silence. My husband sleeps, his body stretched like a tightrope diagonally across the bed. Sometimes the wet flutes in his throat sound like a raccoon is trapped there. The woman's lips, soft and tough as a fox's padded foot. It arrives now, blood stain on a gray hood. It tests the earth like morning. I'm going to read 2 more from the book and then move on to some new ones and possibly zigzag back. But I'm going to read the next 2 poems together. This is my first book, as Matt mentioned, and if you're a writer, which I know some of you are, it's hard to even imagine having a first book. So it still feels like a magical thing is in my hands right now. And one of the things I discovered in the process of creating it is that certain poems form these relationships that you can't anticipate before you start looking at them all together. So while I wrote these two poems at very different times in my life, they're sisters to me. So I like to read them one after the other without a lot of explanation in between. So the first one is short, the second one is long. I have complete faith that you'll be able to follow along. Spell for the end of grief. No incantations, no rosemary and status, no keening women in grim dresses, no cauldrons, no candles, no hickory wands, no honey and chocolate, no sticky buns, no peonies and carnations, no handkerchiefs, no dark and lusty liaisons. Only you and me to see it out. Sweet self, let me wash your toes, brush your hair, let me rock you gently. Together we'll change the sheets and I'll pull you to me, little spoon. You be the marrow, I'll be the bone. To my future granddaughter. It's sweet you want to know me the way sunlight discerns a leaf, but this plan of yours to pretend I'm nearly dead, you get your morbidity from your father's side, you know. Just so I can say whatever the hell I want? Well, here goes. I was in love with a woman whom, in my head, I called with all sincerity the most beautiful girl in the world. We kissed twice. We parted ways. I thought it would happen again. It didn't, or hasn't. So, do with that what you will. No, hold on. Okay, look. Whatever you're about to do, stop. Listen to the acorn in your chest. If you do right by it, a tree will grow inside you. Even if the sanest person, your mother, for instance, I know how she can be, disagrees. You were born a white girl in the first world to a family whom, well, you know. We took you to the beach. Your mother bakes a mean lasagna and your father talks to crows. You've been given a lucky start, so as someone once said to me, suck it up, Buttercup. No one, not even your mother with her impeccable sock drawer, truly gives a flying. You're afraid, that's all. It's stupid that we're built this way. I know I'm an old lady with a nose ring, but once I was an idiot tornado, drilling into earth, treating myself like disaster. Blustery, full of despairing wind, it took me ages to stop, and slowly, so slowly. You think walking me across the grocery parking lot is slow? Slower than that, my nugget, slower than that. I kissed the man who would have been your grandfather goodbye. Not for a good reason, just because I wanted to, and none of this tornado business could make me feel otherwise. Oh, that we could be different creatures, my love. That you and I could be swallowtails or toads, humpback whales or harpsichords. Sweet pea, I'm tired. Fetch me a glass of water. Tell me what it is you want to hear. So I'm gonna try out some new poems with you guys. Some of them are strange. I feel like you can handle strange, only because I can't see your faces very well, and so it'll be okay by me. The first poem is inspired by real life events and also a game that you may have played called Would You Rather. Has anyone ever played that? Would you rather, walk across a field of slugs or a field on fire, and you have to choose between two disturbing choices? So this is a love poem based on that question, and it's called Would You Rather Recover or Idealize a Lost Love? At Travertine Hot Springs, under the Milky Way's white skirt, its sequins pulling free, my love and I drank champagne, toasting the stranger beside us, who drove 10 hours to turn 60 in that sulfur. We sang her a song. She spoke of the daughter she gave up, how she'd given her my love's name, typical hot springs enchantment, making us feel a little psychic, more fully undressed. Back at the lodge, we sat on the bed, eating cheese and bread. My love asked if she could ask a question. I said, okay. How could I, she paused as if deciding something, break your heart? We had not seen each other for 7 years, so how we came to be in a cheap motel in Bridgeport, California, talking about love and its disasters, well, that's another poem. I said, I don't know. I think that's what I said. She turned away, tugging her dark slip. We played cards, quizzed each other. Would you rather eat a dog you loved or live alone in Alaska forever? Would you rather pull your own tooth or another's? Be violin or violinist? She chose Alaska, I chose the dog. She'd pull her tooth, I'd pull it too. We both preferred the violin. Eventually we slept, my lips pressed against her neck. So as you can tell, I write a lot about love and desire. What you may not realize is that poets don't make a lot of money. And so we have lots of side jobs in addition to our job of writing or our job of teaching. And one of my side jobs is freelance writing. And one of the places I've freelanced wrote for is STDquestions.com. And as you may guess, the things you learn by researching STDs are somewhat disturbing, though useful. But I'm spending all this time reading about it, and finally my friends are, they said you need to write STD poems. I was like, all right, game on, let's write some STD poems. And then I decided to make them sonnets. And then I decided to make a crown of sonnets. And a crown of sonnets is 13 sonnets where the last line of sonnet 1 is the first line of sonnet 2. So that meant I needed 13 STDs. So I started interpreting STDs creatively. So I'm going to read you the first 3 of the sequence. And the first one shows you how I get creative, in that the first STD I write about is feelings. So feelings. They've clamped you again when you tabulate text sent, reply speed and length, frequency of kissy emojis, winks, dirty jokes. Flirty pocket, dream stuffed, you're plumed if plucked. Dazed by skin, it's beached soap, riveting sweat. Desire makes a coward of you, brave too. Flimsy trickster, half brute, half wallflower. A fling or long haul, either way you're dashed when groin and heart conspire against the brain. Smitten, tensed, you wish you read minds, eyes, legs that jerk in sleep. Does she run away or how to chill, fairy doubt? No idea, friend. Shy switches all, both ways is how we want. Guess my need, we beg shining, make it yours. 2. Chlamydia and Gonorrhoea. I paired these guys up. They feel like sisters, as you'll see. Their begging need slimes you, white and yellow, inflamed and flaming. They ride our fluids to craft damp palaces in our privates. Both more gonorrhea than Cordelia. Beware if you take one for the other. They act alike and talk alike, pungent yet soft-spoken, festering to flourish in their new kingdoms. Fierce and insecure, they dream themselves queens, wanting fame, glory, but also privacy. C is easily dethroned. G rebels viciously. So misunderstood, called sluts for wanting what they want. For their sly indignities, they crow their frustrations, sing their sluiced cravings. 3. Monogamy. I'm glad I'm cracking 2 people up at least. All right, monogamy. It sluices and sings a craving that brims with promise, one and only, your loins, mine, joined if not by matrimony, then by words, those trusty blowhards, dazzling slipknots. With the cage comes care, of course, then losing condoms and dental dams, all germy risks muted. But if you're winged like a plover, prone to split, fussy as a flamingo necking with a new bevy of babes, Sucks to pledge what you can't or won't provide. Yet, who doesn't like the sound of always when it flares in your lover's mouth like tinder? Bountiful the heart that keeps its vows, full the one immune, both honeyed yet doomed. And I'll end on syphilis because that seems like a powerful STD to end on. So syphilis. Like Oscar Wilde, honeyed and doomed, no one's immune to this imposter who arrives a golden goose, eggs shelling suspect yolks. One bursts into sores, another rashes. One clutters nerves, turns the brain to ashes, parachutes riotous charades. 3 acts and you're gone, sanity slipped like a coin from the ear. Latex would have foiled or next best antibiotics. Try vigilance, not paranoia, when you check your form's array of mottled flesh, itch, and flake. No one wants a sermon, but friend, you must speak. This swindler revives because we don't pry, assuming our lovers shrewd, true, and frank. So those are the STD sonnets. I have to just put things on the ground now. How are we doing on time? Okay, we've got plenty of time. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm from Illinois. I imagine some of you have been there, although I know it's scary to cross that border sometimes. How many of you have maybe driven on I-57 at some point in your life? You know, it's a very beautiful road that a lot of people love, right? Well, I love it. And I've heard a lot of people complain about it, and I've complained about it too. But I've spent a lot of my life driving up and down I-57 in Illinois. I lived in southern Illinois. My parents lived in northern Illinois. Now that I live in Tennessee, I often find myself back on I-57. So this next poem is an ode to I-57, the Illinois segment. O haunted road, tarred snake much bemoaned, O divining rod, O whip laid flat, O nothing like a river yet flowing, O flatness. A road never departs nor arrives. Such riddles rule my mind as I pass exit 237 and recall my college days watching Venus, her blank gaze a thesis advancing hope, rescue, flirtation. I pass Amish land in Arcola and hail the White Cross in Effingham, driving again into the humid south. I-57, you are expert at non-attachment, each vehicle a model of footloose thought. My own thoughts are dolls nested one inside the next, each opening under the hypnosis of field upon field, asking, what loss awaits? What of the zinnias inside a lover's mouth? What of regret, of the mania of missing that sweeps over me, a fog leaning in from the cornfields? No rest stop offers respite from these reveries. I count kisses, surprise parties, dead pets, favorite meals. I count states I've lived in, states I've crossed. I turn my lovers into shades of red, one magenta, another brick. I recall in exquisite detail every room of the old farmhouse, as if repetition delivered epiphanies. Nothing is made clear by these nostalgic arts. I-57, in your repairs and potholes, with your decor of furious signs nailed to fence posts. O scar searing the prairie, O ripcord, O hose clogged with semi-trucks, you offer continuation without clarity. Again, you say, as the seatbelt settles across my hips. Again, as the mile markers diminish toward the state line. Again, as hills crease the plains and heat clings like a tarp. As I travel from the new home to the old one and back, my brain peppered with your cones. Loss is endless antonym. There's nothing that's not also again. I've got a few more poems, but first I'm going to do a party trick. And one of my favorite things I do with my students who are studying poetry is make them memorize a poem. And I realized this was pretty good work for me to do as well. Because when you memorize a poem, you understand it in an internal way. It gets inside your body. It's something you can carry with you wherever you go. So I have a few of them in my bank now. And one actually reminds me of my time in Wisconsin. I used to live in Cudahy, right along Lake Michigan. And my boyfriend and I at the time would take this walk, and we'd walk by this one house, and he would always pretend it was the poet Stanley Kunitz's house and repeat lines from this poem that I'm about to recite for you. But he would repeat it in this like ridiculous voice that I can't do. But I always loved when we would get to that house because I knew he would always make the joke. And there's something lovely in those repetitions, which is really what this poem is also about. And this poem is called Touch Me, and let's find out if I can do this. Summer is late, my love. Words plucked from the air some 40 years ago, when I was wild with love and torn almost in two. Scatter this night of restless wind and rain. It is my heart that's late. It is my song that's flown. Outdoors all afternoon under a gunmetal sky, staking my garden down. I kneeled to the crickets trilling underfoot as if about to burst from their crusty shells. And like a child again, I marveled to hear so clear and brave a music pour from such a small machine. What makes the engine go? Desire, desire, desire. The longing for the dance stirs in the buried life. One season and it's gone. So let the battered old willow shake against the window panes and the house timbers creak. Darling, do you remember the man you married? Touch me, remind me who I am. There's a few errors in there, but I just subbed some words in. Old Stanley, wherever he is in the universe, probably doesn't mind too much. But he's a wonderful poet if you haven't experienced him. So I've got two more poems for you, and then I'm happy to take questions or just have a discussion, whatever you guys want to do. And this first one is called Solitude Meditation. I live alone in Tennessee, and it's been a little lonely, so a lot of poems are about loneliness, and this is one of them. So Solitude Meditation. Solitude multiplies my strangeness like a 9-year-old who's memorized his multiplication tables, the rhythms scaffolding his thoughts until they construct a leaning tower in his mind. That's where I live. In a, not the, leaning tower, making swords for the boy that flick and thresh light. The tower lilts at 65 degrees, which is also the temperature here, neither chilly nor warm, mildly uncomfortable unless you're asleep or making swords, which I've learned works up a sweat. It would be weird to invite the boy up for cookies, as I'm no relative of his, ignorant about sports, video games. The boy keeps a wide berth, singing his numbers. I think he'll be a rapper someday, the way he makes music of the sevens. When I open my window to lower a new sword, nestled in a basket woven from my predictably uncut hair, he shouts he'll kill a bison for me. He's learned about their habitat in science. Or maybe some dragons. Always dragons. I often want to ask him what subconscious fear the dragons represent, or why he's given me this excessive hair, or why I gave it to myself. Instead, I remember being 9. That year, my first crush and I played checkers during indoor recess while rain crashed outside like a toddler throwing a tantrum, wanting only and always more sweetness. I thought I'd marry that crush because his grandparents knew mine, and somehow that seemed right. It would be strange to tell the boy this story. Also wrong somehow. He wants a new sword, black with a gold handle. Sure, I tell him, but request he recites the sevens again, buying time, wanting, despite myself, company. And this last one is about those moments when you wake up at like 3 a.m. and your brain is just going and going and going. And you feel kind of brilliant, like you've thought of things you've never thought of before. that in the cold light of day, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. But there's this like fervent energy of 3 a.m. brain. And so this is my ode to night brain and all of its strange gifts. I wake from a dream about my friend. She helped me fix my opal earrings. We ate spaghetti. It didn't rain. I wake and think, I love Sophia Loretta Glock so much, I must buy her a fancy parasol and discuss with her the pleasure of saying parasol to oneself in the dark. Then I'll buy her some fine bone china, but first must figure out what that is, and even before that, I must tell her I thought of bone china, and thus also of Anne of Green Gables, which will please her mightily, and now I realize that these are all ingredients for my kind of poem. Adoration, illusion, absurdity, and I should be writing this down, but instead repeat her name as talisman. Sophia Loretta Glock, Sophia Loretta Glock. 3 words to hold the gifts, the poem, the dream spaghetti, as well as my doubt that any of this is worth writing. And what about that letter I meant to send to an ex asking for friendship? Should I? Nightbrain says yes. It's always best to say all the things all the time. Do it now, then write all the X's. Tell them which songs bring them back to this old bed, and ask them if you should finally invest in a new mattress. In the dream, Sophia said my earrings were beautiful and teased me for fretting. The earrings stand-ins for me, opals, my birthstone. Of course, she was me too, and my mother was there, and also me, and if everyone in our dreams are stand-ins for ourselves, aren't we all narcissists? But also, isn't it wonderful to employ our loved ones in such exploratory and romantic roles? I would like to go to sleep now, but Nightbrain insists we are doing a great job solving things. What? I ask. Hush, she says. Let's move on to thinking about ghosts. And I say, I don't think that's a good idea because it's windy out and the dogs in the apartment downstairs are yipping loudly and my door is very easy to break through. And Sophia Loretta Glock, did you know your name is a hymn? Not the kind that snuffs candles, the kind that is a moth cupped in our hands before we release it outside, its tattered rags healed by moonlight. That's nice, she'll say, and show me a picture of her neighbor's cute dog, and then we'll talk about love and poached eggs and art and reenactments of unsolved crimes and whether I'll ever fall asleep again. You will, she assures me, but only after instructing me not to write the X because it is selfish to try to get someone to like you because you dislike being unliked. In a hot, quick voice, she continues, as if she feels sand pouring through night like a glass. There's no such thing as a small poem. She's tearing up, and I want to remind her of the man who told us we danced like stallions, but then she says some things I can't repeat without wrecking, so Nightbrain locked them in her velvety safe, and that is where they'll stay. Thank you, guys.